What do you hope to contribute to Toledo City Council?
That is such a good question. I want to bring my knowledge of community to City Council and kind of be that bridge to connect the community that I live in to the city that I love. The government sometimes get disconnected. Sometimes you get so deep into the government and policy, you forget that people are behind them. So I want to try to bring that personal effect back um, to the city council.
What responsibilities are you undertaking as a Toledo City Council member?
Being the bridge, being the bridge, talking to the constituents, actually just getting more involved with the whole community. I've lived in District 4 all my life, so I know majority of each side of District 4 because it's such a large district. The biggest problem in our district is we have such an eclectic district, and sometimes people in District 4 get lost because they're not affluent. I'll say that, where they're not in the arts and entertainment district, or it's just so disconnected. Trying to bring it together is going to be a task, but I'm willing to do it.
You are an educator of 21 years. How does that experience carry over to you being a Toledo City Council member?
One thing is I did every job within education except for superintendent. But when you're a charter school principal, you take on superintendent duties. You have to balance a budget. You have to hire quality staff. You have to train the staff. You have to make sure state reporting is together. So just being a teacher, and also doing state reporting, I learned a whole lot about processes in dealing with public funding. So, and also I learned some not so nice things about dealing with public dollars as well. So, crossing over into politics and city government is not so different than being a charter school principal.
Where do you hope to make the most difference in our community?
My biggest hope is the youth, because my passion all my life has been with the youth, and trying to serve those kids that grew up just like I did. The most vulnerable population is our youth, our inner city youth, and I was an inner city youth. Now I'm an inner city grown up. And I want to make sure that their voices are heard and people are doing stuff for them, but with them.
The city has seen an uptick in violent crimes, specifically involving young people. Where do you think changes need to be made to make sure that our young people can live to the fullest extent?
The biggest gap is people do try to do stuff for the kids without even getting their input. How could you do something for someone and you don't even know what they need? There is a big cultural disconnect in the education system as well. I've said it for years. There's a disconnect. When a child is suspended from school, there is a more likelihood that will continue. So what can we do to curtail the suspension rate? And there's so much data out that says that if a child is suspended from school, there's a 75%, and most of the time they're suspended for things that are not worth getting suspended for. The suspension rate for Black and brown boys and girls is higher than any other race. And that, I definitely think that's a cultural divide. And we see that in our standardized tests. We have a big disservice with our kids in education. And, I commend Dr. Durant on him trying to bridge that gap, but he needs a little help. And I think us as city officials need to help him. And I think that is the part of of the system that we can work together with. No, we can't go in each child's home and fix everything, but there's always been, and if you look at the youth that are in the violent crimes, they are inner city youth. So let's figure out, sit down, what table we need to sit at with them, asking them. And even if it's going to where they are, instead of asking them to come where we are, I think that's a big part of it. You have to meet kids where they are. You have to. You have to stoop down and talk eye level to a child for them to actually understand that you understand them. And I think it's time for us to start getting that eye level with our youth. And I think when we start getting that eye level with our youth, and that means we are where they are, we're coming to where they are. We can embrace them and they can embrace us.
The city is now dealing with a deficit because of the COVID-19 pandemic. How do you hope to balance the budget to make sure that money that can benefit our city goes where it needs to go?
So the big thing about deficits, you gotta trim the fat somewhere. I mean, and I'm not saying that we need layoffs or anything like that, but we have to figure out where our spending is and definitely see if we can make changes to where that is. I took on the leadership of the school that I was at in a deficit. We were in a hole. So it got to the point where, I had to ask the community for help. I had to ask them, hey, where can you help us at? And that may be something that we may need to do, is definitely reach out to the community and say, hey, what do you think we need to do? I mean, and you can't take every suggestion, but we we have to definitely, and COVID put a dent in everybody, even me as a small business owner. Definitely, I understand deficits. So definitely trying to see where we can slim up our belt and tighten up our belt and review it. But like I said, I'm still going through the city budget. It's this thick. So I'm still combing through it. So I don't know the areas right now as we sit here. But I definitely am open to, talking to everyone in every department, learning every aspect of it so I can understand if we do need to tighten up, how could we, or if we need to, or if we can.
You mentioned that you are a small business owner. How can the city encourage more small businesses to start their business here and stay here, especially after the pandemic put a strain on their budget and their income?
Well, the good thing for me is I did actually, and this was prior to, of course, city council. I applied for the small business, the micro grant. That was amazing for me. That carried me over for a month, and I appreciated that. I think that we need to hone in on our young entrepreneurs. We need to start encouraging that entrepreneurship at a level where, I mean, I never would have thought that I would be a business owner today at 41 because nobody told me about it. And I think it definitely needs, nobody taught me about credit. Nobody taught me to balance a checkbook. Those are things that are educations. And I think that if we can start encouraging entrepreneurship, and I know years ago there was a mentorship for entrepreneurship. If we can start encouraging the youth to get involved with that, they might stay and start opening their own business. We just need to actually provide that platform for the entrepreneurs in the city to get that going. I think that's something, and I think Sandy Spang is over the economic development. And I think that she's a small business owner. She knows that task. So she's one that I'm confident that she can kind of help, because she helped me with my small business grant. So walked me through it, worked out, and was personable with it. Keep on doing that. That's what I think will help.
Local Black Lives Matter activists say that police reform measures that were passed in Toledo City Council have yet to be implemented. How will you ensure that police reform legislation is upheld by the Toledo Police Department?
Just keep at them. You definitely got to keep at them. I just remember when I was growing up, the police officers used to come sit on the porch with my grandmother and drink coffee, and they were part of our community, and that's a disconnect. I definitely want to make sure that that community piece is embedded in there, because that is in there, to definitely be more in the community, because I'm telling you, this city is bleeding and crying out for some change. And working together to get those reforms initiated is something that is definitely a priority for me, because I love the police. I have family that are police officers and fire work at the fire department. I just want to make sure that we all can come together and get common ground. Definitely meet common ground. I know Chief Crawl, they already are working to try to recruit more Black and Latino officers. That's something that was in it as well. So definitely just stand on them.
Freshman Toledo City Council member Vanice Williams, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.